there once more. Settle down and listen. Wriggling around in your chair like you do, you'd think these cases I relate are pure epicac. Now take your dose of recently unearthed evils and prepare to pray for the good to come again, before we all grow ill from this blighted world's mendacity and egomaniacal poisons. His name, Todd Nolan, 16, a young man in the strangle of spring's passions, and all the unappetizing evil it would bring into his formative carnal experiences during the budding of the sexual revolution. Location, Dumbarton, Virginia. Date, May 1964. To some, sex is to be feared. It is something that should have its place, and only then be indulged in. To others, it is something so heady and lusty that they crave it however they get it, wherever they can get it, and they will do it with anyone and anything, just to sate the devil's fruits hanging low in their loins. And then there are the rare cases, like little Todd Nolan, where sex is both sought after as an experience ecstatic and feared as a deadly horror of inexplicable torture and unappetizing appeasement. You see, Todd wanted to fulfill his desire so much that he had welcomed into his bedroom a being so cursed and foul. Todd was visited every few nights by the commingling of ethereal and physical. He was plagued at his young virginal age by a succubus, a night terror, the old hag. And in his fear, in his disgust for his uncontrollable lusts for the girls about him, his lusts for the mothers on his block in Dumbarton, his lusts for the girls at the candy counter in the cinema, lust for the pretty cashier ladies in the supermarket, lust for anything prime, lean, lanky, and breasty, with full hair and sparkling eyes. Excuse me. In his lusts for the fine females of Dumbarton, Virginia, Todd was unable to admit, to confess, his primal and visceral yearnings, and so he was too ashamed to now reveal to his family, his parents, his friends, his confessor, his church, his guidance counselors, or even strangers in his town or outside his burg, that he was getting run through the ringer by a ghastly ghoul on random nights of the school week. As Todd would lay in bed, shaking in horror for what might happen, praying it might not happen, he would forego copious hours of sleep as he attempted to nurse his febrile mind. Sweat would soak his pillow, his mattress, his body quivering in disgust and dread of what was certain to come again and again and again, just as it had made him come again and again and again and again. Just saying. It would begin in the deepest of darkness, when little light was visible from the stars or moon, and the spirits of the netherworld, the demons of destruction, would ravage the souls of the stray, and howl without relent in the woods and caverns of the sleeping terrain. A shadow, a blackest form, would rise aside his bed from nothingness, from the floor, standing over Todd on his mattress. He could feel the presence. It stood, always still and predatory, over him for a few minutes, willing him into consciousness, its straggly hair playing out in 1,000 directions like microsnakes from a Medusa's scalp. Its aged body unabashedly displayed, palms outward, arms lifting lightly from its ancient sides. And that breath, heavens above it, came from the pits of hell, a maw so disgusting, breathing heavier and heavier as it came into corporeal existence beside the bedraggled boy in his bed. This was no earthly form, yet it was purely carnal when it bid tarriance. Todd would inevitably shift his body, creaking bones and unwilling muscles, struggling to avoid cowardice, and face his tormentor like a man. A man indeed! He was to be a man, in the full sense of the word. But this piteous boy's mind would be locked in trepidity whenever he would see the sickly siren beside him. And with that power it had, granted by Asmodeus himself, it would paralyze the teenager. He could merely lay there and watch this naked wretch slowly crawl up on him and mount him, his manhood uncontrollable and ready for whatever would transpire. At that age, boys are all like that. I remember it well. It was a curse indeed. For all of us, but especially for Todd, because his nightly prize was worn, sagging, and aged, and hideously unkempt and gnarled beyond human semblance. It was a goonish ghoulie, begotten far from God's fair realm. And it rode slowly. It knew what it was doing, and it did it well. It cackled lightly as it peered from under the hair, red orbs of hate and damnation peering at the boy's twisted visage. Slowly, it pinned him down with heavy hands. Slowly, it went, and it went, getting faster, then slower, then working relentlessly, until Todd's entire body was so tense and strained, as he felt himself ready to gush forth the essence of life. And as always, he would awake. It was sunlight. It was morning. It was the dawn of a new day. A headache. Muscles aching all over. Todd's entire body felt abused. And then the memory of what had ensued, and the blighted cognizance of the previous night. Todd would sob gently to himself the mornings after, remembering the violation, the unsought conjoining, the shame. He tried to be a man and suck it up, but there wasn't enough testosterone in a cart horse to scour the disgust from his mind and body, and there was nothing he could do about his predicament. He was trapped. And so this boy, a shade before the steps of manhood, morosely dragged his feet through the world of 1964. Those bright-eyed and beautiful ladies of Dumbarton were merely reminders to Todd of what he could never have, and what he was denied, because of this undesirable harpy clinging to his evenings. The luscious forms of female fertility all about the lad were now arrows of lament and sorrow, piercing him, once in line of sight. His physical fate was dashed and in his mind forever destroyed. There seemed no end to his mental or physical exhaustion. Grades slipped beyond prudent care. Ability to be social on any level was eradicated, and his hygiene was diminished, and that expedited all his woes. In the eyes of the people of Dumbarton, Virginia, Todd was becoming another worthless bum. He was a used and discarded piece of trash along life's highway, and Todd could only see his worth in the eyes of others as they sped past him. But what could he do? His only escape was hope for cessation and a natural end to this supernatural blight. "Todd," his father asked him at the dinner table, "are you okay?" Todd stared in glassy-eyed disbelief that his parents would even care. Obviously, things had slid so far that even they were getting concerned, instead of ignoring problems like people did in those days. "You're obviously staying up too late," his father continued. "Or something." Todd was speechless. He didn't know what to say. "We've had enough of your problems in this family, Todd," he went on, "without you making it worse. The shame we already have been burdened with is backbreaking, to say the least. Your mother and I have had too much to do to help right this family in the past months. Our obligations are wearing us thin. You are old enough to know what is right and what is wrong. You need to toe the line now, too, boy." The silence over the table. "Well, son, whatever you're doing," his dad told him before the entire family, "stop it." Todd's little sister giggled. His older brother scoffed and snickered, a knowing glance telling Todd that he better stop with all the self-joy in between the sheets. And Todd's mother, she merely looked away and refused to acknowledge anything was wrong, or that the father even mentioned the incident. Todd looked down at his half-eaten plate, thought a few minutes, lost all appetite, and switched his mind into cruise control, turning off to his immediate world and retiring to a place of imagination for a while. In his own world of his mind, Todd could sleep soundly for a span. Nothing was wrong inside. He was free. Free! And so it went on. Nothing was ever solved. Todd was just caught in a place where there was no help and no escape. Nights would randomly become a corruption of flesh and soul. He attempted to bring weapons, something to fend off his libidinous lover, but he would be paralyzed by her vile iniquity granted by Satan himself. And all Todd could do was relent and allow her to have her way. And awake to another painful and shameful day. However, one night her spells and seductions weren't quite as keen. Perhaps with repetition, the powers she spun weren't quite as efficacious, and Todd was able to muster some self-control, some willpower. The shadow slowly materialized aside from Todd in the earliest hours of a Thursday morn. The breathing intensified, and then the hag mounting his bones. His bone! Well, bones and whatever. Her insatiable and unstoppable thirst for copulation was without end indeed. In his mind, poor Todd struggled, closing his eyes tight and shaking his head back and forth lightly until he was loosening the grip of this fiend's charms, but to little avail, because his entire body tensed tighter and tighter, and he was ready to complete his reluctant duties when an anguished cry came forth into the room. A scream so stressed and animalic, it was a bellowing wail of release. And Todd realized that anguished outpouring was his own. He was screaming out as he blasted full force into the incorporeal interloper. She would no doubt take his seed aloft and conjoin it with some foreign woman outside his sight, giving birth to a child of evil, perhaps the son of Diablo himself. The soul of evil being incarnate in this world to decimate humanity and ravage the earth through the trials and tribulations and unto the end days of revelation. Pleased for once with himself, Todd felt consciousness ebbing away again. He was pleased. He could finally break his bonds and scream out, if only for a moment, and his displeasure and woe could be heard. But this issuance wasn't unheeded. Another sound, loud and invasive, penetrated the boy's ken. The bedroom door busting open, inward, and the lights coming on, blinding the bedridden boy. scream of a mother's anguish, a shout of disbelief from a father, a thudding shuffle of 4 feet running to Todd. And as Todd opened his eyes, his sight adjusting to the light cutting away darkness in swaths, he could see his father grabbing the succubus and turning her cragged face to him to recognize the features. Todd's mother gasping over the father's broad shoulders, disbelief on her face. "You!" screamed Todd's dad. "This is where you've been!" "Oh, no!" his mom cried out, recognizing what foul and perverse act had just been interrupted. "God, no!" The old harpy struggled free, and her naked form went under the bed, wriggling and squirming to fit back into the narrow confines between mattress and floor. But it was no use. Todd's father had some kind of almighty power that could thwart the plans of the demonic and wrestle them in corporeal form. It was indeed impressive to the oppressed son. "Get back here, you!" the father bellowed. "You disgusting garbage!" And once the 3 adults were gathered before Todd, his mother grabbing a blanket to enshroud the foul and elderly woman, the boy could finally find relief in the amazing powers of his obviously pious and virtuous progenitors. "That succubus," Todd happily exhaled. "He's been molesting me for months." "Succubus!" his father exclaimed. "This is your Aunt Matilda!" "She's been missing from the asylum since March," Todd's mother angrily explained. "We've been looking for her, paying detectives to track her down since then," his dad furthered. "I hope you rot in hell for this, Matilda." My aunt," Todd expelled, tears of further torture and disgust pouring down his cheeks. "Aunt Matilda." Todd's mother came over to him and smacked the boy's face to bring him to his senses. "I told you to clean under your bed," the mother chided her son. "You never listen."
Like and subscribe before I die. And ring the little bell or you will surely go to hell.
Oh, we're telling spooky stories. This is not a spooky story. Oh, there's no way on the couch I can
it
sit.
depends how you look at it. It is kind of spooky.
I guess so.
Wait, that's it? That's the end of the story?
That is a